do you see if I run on at university one more fucking time, he says, I'm going to stick those calipers up your ass. You know, we're not Formula 1 teams, we're not MotoGP teams, we don't have test riders, we don't have test programs even. I can't remember when I was last in the position that it's very, very clear to see with Rory the talent that he has. Thankfully, I remember the good old days when the sun used to shine, which is, it seems to be back to that now. It's a very crucial time for me in racing because I'm very much nearer the end of this journey now than the start of the journey. He's a very talented boy, very, very talented rider.
Welcome to episode 2 of Off Track Motorcycle Racing podcast here at the Northwest 200 in proud association with Causeway Eats. Whenever you're up on the North Coast, make sure you download the app and get great food delivered straight to your door. In this episode, team boss Philip Neil sits down with us for 45 minutes to chat about the team's history and his love for the Northwest 200 in his home country. That's Philip Neil. This is Off Track, the Motorcycle Racing podcast.
Philip Neil, welcome to Off Track. Great to see you at the Northwest 200. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for the invite.
It's a pleasure. It's home turf for you and the team. What are your memories of the Northwest 200?
Absolutely. It's not that far from home. It's not that far from the workshop, really. It's a bit unique for us doing so much racing in the British Championship, obviously, and having to try to ferries, flights, hotels. This is a bit of a luxury for us. And of course, look, it's one that's always been very, very personal to us, to be honest with you. I came here as a kid, done a bit of motocross racing normally on the Friday night, stayed over with my mates. So I was doing just exactly what all those people out there are doing today. Thankfully, I remember the good old days when the sun used to shine, which is, it seems to be back to that now. And so there's no beer involved, obviously, but we had a bit of crack. Loved the event. I was a bit of a two-stroke man, to be honest with you, back at that time, in terms of, what I like to watch. I loved watching the 250s and, your Woolsey Coulters and Ian Newtons and watching those big battles around there in the two-strokes. So that's what kind of got me hooked. Loved the event, loved the atmosphere. And then my father obviously was steeped in history with road racing anyway. He had taken a bit of a sabbatical for a while. And we got the idea together again to put a bike back out. It was actually a bit of an ironic story actually, because some particular guy at some particular entrance here, when he wasn't involved in the racing at that time, kept stopping him because he had no pass and refusing him entry, and he actually didn't want to pissed off for that. He said, I need to put a bike out again. So that was how it started actually, and we just literally got a flip and started off with that. Our business obviously is salvage, and we started off with a damaged R1 Yamaha and turned it into an R70 one as they were racing at the time. So that's where it started.
What are your best memories of being part of the team and running the team with your dad?
I suppose I put it together initially, to be honest with you, more or less sounds a bit corny, but more or less for him really, because my passion wasn't really road racing or circuit racing. I'm a motocross man really, but obviously it gets you, it gets a hold of you. This place did. The Northwest caught me from, instantly. Took me a bit longer to warm to the TT, to be fair. Although I love the Isle of Man and I love the nostalgia of the event, but the obvious things about it always scared me. So just really that first year probably memorable. We had a tough old winter because the plan was just to turn this Yamaha into a stalker. I got kind of carried away a bit. Looked at what was winning races then, and it was V&M on a so-called R71, which I had no idea what it was about. Contacted QB Carbon at the time, who were building the most of the parts for the tanks and things, and of course I ordered the whole job. And I was working in the business at the time, and the business were paying for it, so I didn't see that I needed to ask anybody permission. So I just spent what I needed to spend and built this Yamaha, and that was all last minute. We finally got Ian Locker. Brian Reid was involved with us then. We've been sort of family friends with Brian for years, and Brian suggested Ian Locker to ride it, who was obviously more known then as a two-stroke rider. And that's probably that's as good a memory as I've got. And obviously the next year, I'd have to say the next year when DJ won the first race for us, those are the two most special memories, to be fair.
I mean, we had Jack Valentine on the show a few weeks ago, and we were talking then fondly about DJ. Yeah. What are your best memories of the big man?
Can I swear?
Yes. If DJ is concerned, yes.
Well, he was such a character, and I did. Look, it's difficult for someone in my position, and back then I was very much more nothing really fundamental has changed, but I was very much more manager rather than owner then. So, and I mean that from the respect of being involved in the decision making.
Sure.
Now I tend to step back from the decision making. I've got some really, really great guys there to do that, and I don't need to get involved. But back then I was kind of making all the decisions, and DJ and I it was real good the way we put the deal together. It was always handshake stuff from that point. You know, that's literally how we put the deal together. I mean, we agreed it over him eating a rack of barbecue ribs in Belfast at the Belfast Motorbike Show, and I didn't have the money. He needed a few quid. We didn't have the money really, and we didn't have an oil sponsor. Well, we did have an oil sponsor, but there was no finance involved at the time. And he said to me, we had the rack of ribs, and he said to me, "Have you got an oil sponsor?" And I said, "Yeah." "Is there money involved?" "No, there's no money involved." He said, "Well, would you use Putolene?" And I said, yeah, of course I would. So he just give me 10 minutes. So he went off around the show with the phone to his ear, and he came back to me. He goes, "Right, we'll have a deal." And that was how we done it. And honestly, I wish I could do them all like that. I wish I could continue with that. So we did that. We got him up and running, and you know, he was quite impressed with what he'd seen with the Suzuki, with the GSXR, which really was the bike. It was way ahead of its time at that point. We didn't even know when we had agreed on a deal with Suzuki. We didn't know how good the GSXR was going to be to honest. And of course, the first year was somewhat curtailed because of the foot and mouth thing.
Yes.
So we didn't get to do too much, but we had a great performance on it at the Ulster Grand Prix. So we'd been impressed with what he's seen there. We got him on it here. And I remember I was telling somebody this the other day. I remember I won't mention names because it's not fair to run anybody down, but you typically can easily have brake problems at the Northwest 200. It's caused by, you know, it's so ripply and you're going on a straight line for a long time. It's caused by what they call pad knockback, and you can get to the end of a straight and all of a sudden find you're having to pump your brake. But we were using a brake then, which he had wanted me to use. Yeah. Actually, he had put me in touch with the company, and we used the product, and I didn't really care what we used at that time, to be honest. But anyway, we had the brake on, and with nothing but kept having problems. But I would be corporate when I'm using something and representing something. I don't want to change it. And he'd been moaning all right through the first sessions, and he kept running on at University Corner. And I remember him coming in at one stage. I can't even remember. It probably was a nighttime session at that stage. And I remember him coming in and saying, "Listen, do you see if I run on at University one more fucking time," he says, "I'm going to stick those calipers up your ass." Okay, there you go. So
DJ said that.
So let's just say we had a different type of caliber on by the time we got to the TT, and I didn't end up with calipers up my ass.
No, which is great. It's always useful to have that. And then went on to success at the TT as well with the team, which was fantastic to see. Which kind of then really put the team on the map, I guess, from there.
Very much so. I mean, we had a history with Suzuki. Me as a motocross rider, actually, and my father obviously back in the good old days with Norman Brown and that. So we'd had a long running history with them, and my father still had a friendship with Rex White at the time, who was the guy behind the road racing team. So Rex introduced us to Nick Barnes, who was a marketing manager at the time. Went along I'd done a bit of negotiating with him prior to the NEC show time of year in Birmingham, and we went along there and met with Nick, and you know, quite easily put a deal together. Like I say, we had no idea that the GSXR was going to be as good as it was. We really didn't. We were very, very lucky with that. But we felt passionate about the brand still, and we wanted to represent the brand regardless of how competitive the bike was. You know, because the first idea really in starting it wasn't to come in and try and, you know, it wasn't actually to come in and try and dominate. Of course, everybody likes to win, but we just wanted to put a team together and have some fun and, you know, and make the thing look as good as we could. And that's what we did. But when the bike turned out to be that good, and then all of a sudden within what felt like 5 minutes, we'd signed flipping the biggest name in road racing at the time. And it was because he came to us, because he'd liked what he'd seen in the Suzuki. I'm not, you know, to be honest, it wasn't because he'd liked what he'd seen in the team, but we did have quite a lot of mutual people who, you know, had told him that, you know, Hector and even Philip. And so a lot of people that we knew each other mutually, if that makes any sense.
Of course.
And we got the deal put together. Nick Barnes, as I said, Suzuki was tremendously helpful. We got a bit of information. There wasn't really any factory parts at that time, but we got a bit of information from Suzuki. We brought Nigel Everett in, actually, as a what we would nowadays call as a crew chief. Nigel was ex-factory Suzuki mechanic from the Barry Sheen days. And
Mick Grant's on with
Yep. We brought Nigel in to help me build the bikes and to look after DJ. And that was a bit of a statement, really, because, you know, you want to give the rider confidence, and I think that's what it did. You know, it gave David great confidence. But, you know, we came here with a couple of crutch problems, but he did win a race, which was what it was all about. And away we went to the TT, and as you say, fairly dominant. Did we win both the Superbike races, the Super Stock? We were 1 and 2, and Ian Locker won the Super Stock 600 race that year, and Billy was maybe second behind Jim Moody in the Super Sport. So that was
we're here.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock, really, to be honest with you. And Suzuki could not believe it, because it's not like they were running their own team at hundreds of £1,000s of cost. They give us some motorbikes and a little bit of support.
Yeah,
we went and done it. So Nick was, every time we got another race win, Nick was reporting back to the Japanese representatives in the UK. We've won another race. And I remember there was a joke coming from Suzuki. It's like, oh, gee, we better be calm, because we'll make Honda angry. And I remember, I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten, because I was, I think I thought it was a joke. I think it was quite serious.
I think so.
Yeah, it was a bit. It's the Japanese culture.
It's
better just be calm.
Big Honda, and with Suzuki, Suzuki do lots of things. Was kind of Honda, but Honda were the biggest, weren't they?
Well, wasn't it kind of known as Honda Island at that time? Weren't they winning nearly everything? And but that was the report that came back to me, like, oh, they weren't telling me to stop winning or anything, but it was mentioned in the conversation. It was just a continuation at that time of what had always been a great relationship. Different people, but the same brand.
Yes.
Graham Beamish was my boss in the off-road side, and just Graham and Nick were very similar people, and even Rex, and obviously all the people that we went on to get to know afterwards. It was always, even if it was different people, it was always a very passionate brand, and we were always very passionate about the brand in those days.
Was it difficult to move away from Suzuki to BMW then, in that case?
I won't tell you a lie. I'll tell you God's honest truth. The day that, when I finally made the phone call, I did move for one reason, and I'll tell you what the reason is in a second, but two reasons really. The day that we met, because when I rang finally to say that we were going to move on, there was the Japanese tend to change the leadership every 3 to 4 years. So the gentleman that was in charge of GB at that time, I wasn't overly familiar with him. I knew him, but I didn't know him as well as I'd known the previous boss. And he said, "Oh, okay, it's okay. We need to come and see you." So they flew over that next day, 2 of them, and I met them in a hotel near the airport, actually. And I'll tell you, I'll be absolutely honest. I had tears in my eyes the whole way through the meeting. I couldn't not do it, because I'd already given a commitment that we were going to move. After I'd thought about it for a long time, asked a million people's opinion, within the inner circle. Just, was it the right thing? Was it the wrong thing? But there was a couple of things that happened. We kind of were going down a business relationship with them, which didn't work out, and it's a little bit sort of, we were annoyed at that at the time, and then the support had, as it tends to do with most manufacturers, the support had kind of reduced rather than increased, and that's all related to what's happening in the motorcycle industry, or their passion to promote a new bike. If they haven't got a new model, they don't tend to want to spend so much money through the marketing budget to promote the bike, and that makes sense. I understand that. Yeah. But we were trying to run a team, and some of the equipment that we were using at that time to try and compete at a high level was starting to get a bit older now. Even though I think we were still doing a pretty good job with it, to be honest. And they were happy with the job we were doing. There wasn't ultimate pressure on to win races, not on circuit level anyway, which was nice. All they wanted to do was be represented near the front, and that's what we were able to do. But I got an approach late in the previous season from a gentleman called Lee Nichols, who's unfortunately no longer with us. Lee approached me, and his approach was very impressed me right away. I liked the guy right away, and I liked his approach, and I liked how he was going about it, and I liked what he said and what he said. It wasn't, at that time, it wasn't so much a brand thing. It was Lee as an individual, who made me eager to become part of the brand. And it became, I'm pleased to say, much like it was with Nick back in the Suzuki days, it became a very, very good relationship on a personal level as well as a business one. I became very, very close friends with Lee. For many years afterwards, even when he went on to with the brand, he went on to Japan. So that was honestly 100% why I made the decision. I did even talk to Lee at the time about how difficult it was on the Suzuki side, and what Lee had said was that why he had came to me was that he was impressed with the job that we were doing with, an aging model, I suppose, and he was keen to see what we could do with their fresher model, So that's how it came about. Wasn't easy.
No, and it has. To all intents and purposes, it's been a difficult couple of years. To see where the team is now, you've got Davey Todd for the roads, and for Superstar, you've got Rory on the BSB bike. Difficult year last year, I think, for everybody, but trying to pull the brand forward. Yeah. It hasn't been easy, especially from a BSB perspective.
No, it started out great for us, back in 15. It started out fantastic. I mean, we had the media magnet at the time in road racing, Guy Martin, and that made it dead easy to hit our flipping AVE figures. Everybody was over the moon with the coverage we get. And Guy done an event that we were invited to do at Silverstone, I think it was, and we done it along with David Coulthard and the Red Bull Formula 1 team. And they set it up deliberately in such a way that they wanted the full Red Bull team there, which I think was 13 or 14 personnel. Took about 3 people just to start the car. And they wanted to really exaggerate the difference, so they wanted just Mark Buckarwell, who was DJ's mechanic at the time. They just wanted Mark in a van, and not DJ, sorry, he was DJ's mechanic actually, but he was Guy's mechanic at that time. They wanted Mark in a van and one bike, and that's how we done it. They wanted to do this comparison. They did laps around Silverstone, and they compared the kind of speeds and whatnot. The figures that returned, the viewing figures that returned was at that time was equivalent to a full BSB season. And that was just based on Guy, the popularity that Guy had at that time. So I'm talking about value equivalency, of course, not necessarily the viewing figures. I'm talking about the equivalency of it. So he, we got it. I've lost my track now where we actually were, but we had Guy Martin at that time, and we had Tommy Bradwell and Michael Laverty in BSB, and of course we won a couple of races right off the bat. That was with the older K46 model, which was entirely different to this new bike. It had a totally different strength and a totally different weakness than the current one does. It's almost nearly now reversed. But it has become more difficult over the last few years. I think there's a number of reasons for that, really. I mean, not sometimes, all the time almost, when a manufacturer does go for a completely redesigned model, it's difficult to get it, to make it competitive quickly. It is, you see certain other manufacturers at the minute find that same challenge, through, it could be mechanical gremlins or maybe breakdowns, or finding enough horsepower or the right kind of spread of horsepower, and then matching that together with chassis. And we're not Formula 1 teams, we're not MotoGP teams, we don't have test riders, we don't have test programs even.
No.
And of course, even now, the way it is in BSB, which I can't really complain about, because I was one of the campaigners for it at the time, of curtailing the winter testing, because to me it was just starting to get too expensive what we were doing. But I do think now it's something that hopefully we will review with the organisers going forward, because if you've got a new bike or a new rider like we have this year with Rory, it is difficult to start the season in April or May, only having jumped on that bike, the actual superbike, a couple of weeks before. That it's a challenge.
A shakedown at Bishop's Court, or it doesn't cut the mustard before you head to Navarra or wherever you head to.
No, it didn't.
You need more than that.
It didn't, and we've done the best thing that we could do in the case of Rory anyway, and we put him on a practice bike, which lots of people use now.
Yeah.
And he done as many miles as he could. But really, by the time we do that now, we're probably, we're spending time and money, and we probably might as well be testing the superbike now. So I'm hoping it is something maybe that for the good of the series, they'll look at again, because when you can attract young talent like Rory back into the series, that for me, that's a significant step forward. And it's basically only at 22 years of age now. But he to then expect him to do the job without having any time to really work on the bike, have it in terms of understanding exactly what it does. Don't get me wrong, it's you can look at him what he done right away and be fooled into thinking, oh, didn't need any time in the bike. He's jumped on the viral and he's been competitive right away. But
5th place in his first race.
Yeah, but that's a sign of the talent that he has. And I mean, okay, we've got the bike in a decent place because it's 3rd year now effectively with that model.
Sure.
So we kind of know where we are with the bike anyway. But we're only now. It tends to start like that, and then you'll hit a bit of a wall when you're really trying to find that last few tenths that you need. And you go to different circuits, and we found a different set of problems at Open Park that we found at Navarra. It was very clear that Rory, hadn't been to Open for a couple of years, and it's a tricky wee circuit to come back to, or especially if you were there for the first time. But to do that on a bike that he didn't yet fully understand, it was just we were I think, like I say, we were just finding a different set of problems.
It was a difficult weekend, Alton Park, for the superbike.
Yeah,
for Rory with the big crash.
It was. I mean, prior to the crash, obviously it was still very positive. I mean, he was the fastest of the BMWs in. Not that really matters, but it's a sign of where he is. He was the fastest of the BMWs in qualifying, and he was the highest place in race one, and he had the fastest lap in race one. So all that was good. And to me, what was he in the first race? Wasn't it eighth? Seventh or eighth?
Seventh, I think.
Not where we really want to be finishing, and not where he really wants to be finishing. But I thought it was a great starting point to the weekend, and our goal before we finished was top 5, and that was realistic. Because really these Yamahas and the Ducatis actually have really started. They've started out quite dominant, and to be expecting to go from where we were to beating them by the end of the day would have been unrealistic. But to finish in the top 5 was very realistic. And that's a real frustrating thing for me, because I can't remember when I was last in the position that it's very, very clear to see with Rory the talent that he has. He is, in my opinion, he is world level talent. And we were able to watch him in that 5th place, 7th place, 8th place, where you're not panicking, because there was always clear that it's going to come, because the talent's there and his attitude's right. His calmness. He hadn't really crashed. He'd one slip off the practice bike in midwinter, and then he'd won, unfortunately, high side at Navarra, one very small slip off in Old earlier in the week at the test, and then unfortunately that one situation which caused by a false neutral. Really, I mean, it's not like, I mean, it's still down to man and machine, but it wasn't like he was pushing too hard or anything. It wasn't losing the front. It wasn't a chassis setup thing. It was just a very, very unfortunate false neutral, ran onto the grass, and it's one of the highest speed places of
all the places to do it at Alton Park.
Yeah, it's just not a place to do it. But
SorryMate.com are specialist motorcycle accident solicitors that have decades of experience dealing with all types of motorbike accident claims. They know that having the right person represent you with your motorcycle accident claim can make a huge difference in all aspects of your journey to recovery that follows any motorbike accident. SorryMate.com is run by bikers for bikers. I know the team well. They're genuinely great people who really care about their clients. Head to SorryMate.com to find out how the team can help you, or just click the link in the description below.
Oh, well, listen, it could have been worse. The end result could have been worse. Thankfully, he's in one piece, and Louis took a bit of a bang to the head. He'll recover from it, and he'll come back. I'm fairly hopeful that he'll come back. It might take him. There's no doubt. There's no point in denying. It's put us back a step now, for sure. And it might take him a bit of time to to get full confidence back again. Of course, while we're still fit, we're still working on setup, because we've a long way to go with the bike for him. Actually, he's actually riding a remarkably standard bike, because we were at a point whereby there's so many different versions of chassis parts now for the BMW, and you're always working out what was Redding using and what's Top Rack using. And what we decided to do, we brought a lot of experience into the team with Rory, and Stuart Shenton is a 30+ year MotoGP experienced crew chief, knows what he's doing. So we decided, together with Stuart as a group within the team, we decided just to go right back to standard with Rory, because he'd been riding a standard bike over the winter anyway. So, completely standard bike. So, and he was quite happy with that. So we decided to go right back with the very first version of the swing arm that we had from Suter, as completely stock frame, and a mildly tuned engine. And we were just starting to work our way up from that. Oh, excuse me. So I was talking. Oh,
it's there.
So this is not a branding exercise, by the way.
It can be. I don't mind. But I realised it was there, and I passed it to you soon.
Aye, because I was just starting to choke. So yeah, I mean, but hopefully he comes back and we can pick up where we left off.
It's nice to have that base for him and the talent that Rory has. And then speaking of talent, the other side of the garage on the stock bike, you signed Davey Todd towards the end of last season with a view to doing the roads under the Milwaukee banner.
Yeah.
Supersport and Navarra on the podium, disappeared off into the distance at Alton Park.
Yeah.
We're here now at the Northwest 200, and he's showing his true colours here. It's great to see it.
He's a very talented boy, very, very talented rider. Davey, in my opinion, I don't know him that well. I've got to know him over a couple of years now, but I don't know him that well. But he always struck me as a rider who was. You hear people talk about confidence riders. They're all confidence riders to a degree, but
no question.
I think Davey is very much in that category. I could see a difference in him from 22 to 23, and in my opinion, that was started off by a change in confidence. So we looked at we done a deal with Davey early, as you say in the year before. We gave him 3 rounds on the Superbike at the end of last season, and he done a decent job there. The original plan, I will admit, was to run two Superbike riders, and Davey being one of them, obviously, and that just it was becoming clear to me over the winter that was going to be difficult for me for different reasons, sponsor commitments and different things. It was going to be hard. It was going to be hard work. So we had to rethink, and I could either make a choice that we continued with 2 Superbikes and done it. I don't mean half-heartedly, because we never do anything half-heartedly, but budget-wise, it might have been difficult to do it at the level I wanted to do it at.
What was the phrase I heard in the week? 100% of 80%.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, that's where it was probably going to be, and I could see that, and it's a very crucial time for me in racing, because I'm very much nearer the end of this journey now than the start of the journey. And I'm not being cryptic with that, but it's for me personally, it's coming close to the end of it. And it's 25 years, so that was a very, significant landmark for me. And I really wanted to give this year, 100%, whatever 100% looked like. That's what I wanted to do. We were very, very lucky because we chased various riders, and in discussions with BMW, there was various different plans with riders that they were already attached to that all slowly but surely fell through, and it was coming reasonably late in the day, and I thought, okay, we could be in trouble here. And then Rory came along as an option, and as soon as that became, we jumped on that.
Yeah. Absolutely
jumped on that. And at that stage, I thought, right, okay, this lad got the talent to come back and be running right at the front here. And Davey, we'd had a number of meetings. Listen, Davey he obviously wasn't that pleased about it. And I'd never gone back on an agreement in my life in racing and in anything. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but it was something I really needed to do. And I'm grateful and thankful that that we got him to understand in the end why we were doing what we were doing, because there were a couple of other things that had become clear that, hey, listen, and I'm a big believer that there's a silver lining on every cloud. You just need to know where to look for it. And the silver lining in this cloud was, Davey's going to get a chance now. I believed he would go on the Stalker and win races if he gelled with a BMW, which he did. I believe that he would be challenging to win races. It's going to cost me a few quid because, of course, I had to promise him a few bonuses, but that's part of the benefit for him. We agreed to do a couple of other races, which he'll sort of see as the season goes on now, which he wouldn't have been doing had we been in Superbike with him. And I did genuinely feel that right in the 2 bikes, the Superstock, the M1000, obviously runs on BMW's own RCK electronics, and so the plan right away was build a Superbike very similar to the stock bike, which it's basically what he's riding is a stock bike with a Superbike engine, but it's got the same electronics, same seat, same tank, same handlebar, same grips, everything feels the same. Electronically, it does everything exactly the same, just a little bit more power. And I wanted him, because Davey is a bit, not paranoid, I won't say he's paranoid, but he's quite rightly doesn't want to be labelled as a road racer. And I genuinely don't label him as a road racer. I actually look at Davey and look, well, there's a good circuit rider who can road race.
Yeah.
I don't look at it the other way. Very much the same as how I would look at Peter Hickman. There's a lot of, over the years, there's been a lot of good road racers who could also ride circuits. But Davy is in the Peter Hickman category, in my opinion.
I would agree.
So that was, it's important that he knew that. We made that clear to him. But I also felt that riding the same bike on the same electronics, I mean, he had to understand, and he does understand that my relationship with Milwaukee, we all need title sponsors, and we need that title sponsor, and they're on a very good title sponsor they are. It's based on road racing, and it's based on results in road racing. So we needed to do the job I was tasked with was putting together a team that has the best chance of success in road racing. And with all of the other circumstances combined, Davy's the best way to get Davy up to the confidence level and give him the familiarity with the machine that he was going to be riding was to have that continuity across the technical specification. So that was the silver lining in a decision that we had to make based on our commercial circumstances.
But does that make a huge amount of sense for the commitment to the road racing and from the BSB point of view to hop back between the BMW electronics and the Motec system and trying to relearn that? The consistency that sets him up for the road season.
Yeah.
I mean, not once, not twice if he's going to be at Amoy or something like that. It gives him that familiarity and the confidence with the bike, I would say.
Well, that's what I think. That's what I think. I mean, as an ex-rider myself, okay, not in road racing, but it doesn't matter. It's all the same. The mentality is the same, and the familiarity. And I'm speaking as someone who rode 125 two-stroke and 500 two-stroke on the same day, and the mindset is different. It's probably not as difficult as what I'm making it sound now. I mean, if Davy was sat here, he'd probably say, it's okay, you just switch your brain into a different mindset. And you do, I get that. I actually do get that. But it's not just that. It's now getting in down to that finite detail that even for us, we need as much time in working with the bikes on the RCK electronics as well, so that we can perfect that.
Yes.
In collaboration, because you go to TT and it's a completely unique environment. So we have to have an engine, electronics, chassis, radiator, cooling, efficiency. All of that has to gel. And if you're chopping and changing back and forward between one and the other, different to a degree, probably for some of the very few riders who ride the TT who would ride a BSB superbike every week in, week out for the past number of years, that's slightly different because then those guys really are riding what they've perfected over a long period of time and what they're comfortable with. Probably for them, changing the other way would have the same difficulty.
No question. Because
they haven't had the same time to spend on that.
Yeah.
So that was how we chose to look at it anyway. We chose to take that positive out of it. Reluctantly, Davey now sees that. I think he's now possibly as happy as he's ever been, or sort of, that's judging by what he said anyway. That's what it sounds like. He looks happy. When he's happy, he's fast. Because he's fast, we're happy. And because of all those things, sponsors are happy. We had a bit of bad luck dealt to us at Oulton, obviously, with Rory. And with only one superbike rider, we needed something to save the day, and the super stock and Davy done exactly that, because I have always found that, most cases anyway, that we bring a lot of guests to BSB races, as it's easy to see, there's a lot of sponsors there and customers of sponsors, and the majority of people that are there watching a motorbike race, it's a motorbike race. Yeah. They really don't care whether they're watching superbike, super sport, super stock. It doesn't matter. If the rider walks into the awning for his post-race interview with a trophy in his hand, that's a success. You and I might look at it differently because we know the values of the different categories, but it's about winning races.
And he did so well.
Absolutely.
Controlled it right from the off. And that shows the confidence of Davy. And he's brought that forward to this weekend as well, riding the superbike, the Stocker, and the Ducati Supersport.
Yes,
bike.
he's in the Supersport as well. And he's competitive on them all. Okay, I don't think did he end up topping the grid on the Super Stock? I think he did. Second in Super.
I'd be surprised if he didn't.
I think he's just second in Superbike and second in Super Sport. So grid position doesn't really matter so much at the Northwest. As you know, you could start in pole position in every race and be sixth place by the time you get to to Coleraine.
Exactly.
But it's good again from a confidence thing. It lets us see where we are. I think most significantly this week already is the lap times that the guys have been doing. Both Davey and Glenn Irwin are both under the lap record on the Superbike.
Incredible speeds already. The weather's been fantastic. The North Coast is awesome.
Yeah, the road was a bit patchy at the start of the first session today with a little bit of overnight rain, but otherwise, it's been glorious. And look, he's here. He's in good form. He's definitely confident. He's definitely happy. And we had a good long talk about this yesterday. And for sure, it's a great position. We probably are, in terms of Davey, we're in as good a place as we could have expected to be at this stage of the year. But for me, it's also very important to remember that we've still got a job to do. All we've done now is build a great foundation, and it is a great foundation. Don't get me wrong, but it's only that. We've still got a job to do. We need to finish that job off. And let's fingers crossed that things can go in the right way, that we can do what we believe we can.
How much influence has the happiest man in the paddock, Steve Blater, brought into the team as team manager?
Steve's a good guy, lots of experience, a good way with people. And what Steve doesn't do, so much to do, doesn't take so much to do with us on the road race side, because he's obviously got lots of other commitments around that. But he's always here. He's always there or around if we need him, and we'll call on him, and already have called on him a couple of times this week. But in BSB, particularly in BSB, what it's really done is, like we said earlier about the manager-owner type thing, I was, and I'm not afraid to admit this, I was beginning to become detrimental to the team, because I was under so much pressure with the money side of it and putting the budgets together and keeping everybody happy with what they're getting from it. And then I've got other pressures in business and family matters and different things going on, and it's really difficult. So I found that I was tending to, bring my pressures to the garage, and that was a very bad place to be. It was a very bad place to be. And then with other commitments, I couldn't always be there all of the time. And although I'm completely 100% trusting the guys that are in the team, even though at that time no one else might have been wearing a manager's badge, the team was still managed by the team. But for some people that wasn't enough. There's some people looked in and thought, well, who's managing that team? I trust the guys that were managing it, and I know, and if they needed anything there, I was never any further than a phone call away. But I knew something needed to be done with that. I had to address that. I couldn't possibly be there any more than I was, because after 11 as well, of course, and I just couldn't be there any more than I was there. And like I say, with the different pressures, I was kind of bringing we used to talk about, we made a bit of a joke then going into the COVID times, that we were actually saying the COVID thing was a good thing. Not that it was good in any way else. I don't mean it that way, but the mask thing.
I know what you mean.
The mask thing was a good thing for us, because it hid the grubby faces. And Steve and I ended up with a bit of a running joke. It was, if he'd see me with a grubby face, somebody'd say, "Put your mask on." So, but that's, it's very true, because you can sometimes tell how well a team's doing. If you've just arrived on a Saturday afternoon, you can tell how well or not a team's doing by looking from the outside into the garage. You can tell whether it's a happy team or an under pressure team or a sad team. So we needed a happy team, and that's what we done with Steve. And of course, together with that smile, we brought in all that experience, because he was already doing rider spotter for different riders that we had. Andrew Nolan being one. He was already rider spotter for those guys anyway initially. And it worked for everybody, because we then were somewhat instrumental in linking him together with BMW to end up it's a system with the R900 series, and he brings us a complete package. And now when someone needs to represent the team and go and have a sit down with Stuart Higgs, or attend a team meeting, or even meet a sponsor who might be there on Friday if I'm not, then Steve's there to do that. And again, I've got 100% trust in Steve.
One last thing, the TT coming up in a week or so's time, it's almost one after the other. And one thing you said there really fascinated me. As we look back to last year, the lap time that Peter did and the success Peter did on kind of the hybrid stocker superbike. Yeah. That bodes well. Davey now has everything he needs. I'm a big fan of having planets align. and having your ducks in a row and all the other metaphors that come with it. But it seems to me that after the difficulties of the winter and the decisions that you made, you've got all the ducks in a row for Davey now, and this now is that next step for him to challenge for the podium. Last year was difficult, we know, but I think he has all his ducks in a row now.
Yeah, more so probably than we've ever been before, to be honest, because we made some. Davey was also he was helpful in that situation in that he doesn't take an awful lot to do with what the structure of the team is going to be or what the technical specification of the bike is going to be. Yeah. I don't know if that's just him as a personality or if he accepted that he didn't know enough about the BMW to give an opinion, but I barely heard from him. And that I found helpful because I've worked with riders in the past who arrived and told me right away what they want. And sometimes what that want wasn't based on any fact, based evidence. It was just because somebody else has it or whatever the situation might be or their perception of. And we've built motorbikes before to go racing in the TT, and we've spent the weeks leading up to the TT and a fair part of the practice week taking parts off the bike that we'd originally put on and going back to something closer to standard. Because it's not a superbike race. It's simple. It's not a superbike track as it's anything similar to what a BSB or a World Superbike rides on. It's entirely different. And the bike, the standard bike, the M1000RR, and this is again not a sales pitch, but the bike is so strong as it comes out of the box with BMW's own electronics on it. Then they've enhanced that with the RCK, which we had some problems with at the start, at the very, very early stages. We were kind of the pioneers of it, really, whilst they were developing it. But now it's fantastic. I mean, it's just got a library of settings, and as long as you're relatively clued into what it is you're looking for, it's there in the library. You just apply the setting. And for me, you look at you mentioned Peter as a reference. I can't remember exactly what the spec of his superbike was, but I know it was a bit of a hybrid, as you say. But then you look at the lap time he done on the Stalker, and am I right in saying, was he not fastest on the Stalker last? Was he not faster on the Stalker last year?
He set the lap record on the Stalker.
It was definitely 136. It was definitely 136. I think he was faster last year on the Stalker than he was in the Superbike.
I was trying to cover up my thinking on the Spox. I couldn't remember if it was on the hybrid or if it was on the Stalker, but I do seem to think it was on the Stalker.
I think it was the Stalker, and that, okay, we're running slick tires now, but I don't think the tires are really that different. They're not. That's not the factor. The fact is that bike, and that was impressive because, I'm presuming Peter didn't spend a lot of time on that bike. He would have ridden here at the Northwest. Yeah. And that just goes to show you where you're at. So really, when you look at it from that point of view, why fix what's not broken, really? And we've anyway, it was a hard decision to make because as motorbike enthusiasts, I think we all tend to do the same thing. We get the motorbike and we look for the big shiny parts and what might be winning at world level. And before you know it, we've created something that looks fantastic, and it's all based on theories that this is going to be better. But where are you backing that up with factual evidence? And if you go back to the drawing board and you look at the Superstock bike and you look at what it's doing in BSB and you look at what it's done on the lap records at the TT and all these different things. Here last year, we had less problems on the Superstock bike than we did with Alistair Seeley and than we had on the Superbike. And when you look at all those things combined, you just think, let's just stop making this so hard to work. Just make it simple.
But keep it simple.
Yeah. And now we'll react. Similar to what we're doing with Rory. I mean, we've got a list of parts coming, which some of the other BMW riders already have, which I do believe will be beneficial to Rory. And we've got lots of parts in the toolbox, as they say, for Davey, should he need them. Yeah. But so far, so good. We had a couple of niggling problems to start off with on the Superbike. He had a few laps on it in Navarra. I had a few more in Olton, and I'm sure it wasn't rocket science to notice that he was significantly faster on the Stalker than he was in the Superbike. It puzzled us for a day or two now, to be honest with you. It was a bit of head scratching going on, and then we figured out something fundamental, and it was a pretty easy change, and all of a sudden, bang, the bike's there.
Incredible. I just noticed on you, we've got a couple of hours before we go racing.
Yeah.
Philip, thank you so much. That has been absolutely fascinating. I'm sure the viewers and listeners will feel the same.
Hope so.
I know it's a busy afternoon. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Philip NEILL.
Thank you.